What's up, Dolphin fans? Josh Katzker, same old Dolphin show here on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel to kick off the regular season. It's game week, baby, and we're bringing it back. It's Dolphins versus everyone.
Dolphins versus everyone.
Before we dive into the show, I'm bringing in a friend of mine this week. His name is Michael Antico. He is a big-time New England Patriots fan, and this is what this series is all about. It's bringing in a fan, a journalist, somebody, a blogger, a media personality, somebody associated with whoever the Dolphins' opponent is for a particular week. We're going to be bringing them into this show here on Dolphins versus Everyone. Mike kicked off the series earlier this summer, and we're going to continue it now as we head into the regular season. So it's a lot of fun, the chat that I had with Tico. He's a buddy of mine. We kick it back. It's laid back. We have a good time talking football, just a couple of friends. He just happens to be a Patriots fan. Hey, what can I say? Nobody's perfect. But before we dive into that, a reminder to all of you out there that you should like this video, subscribe to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel, as well as click that alert bell so that you're notified every single time we go live or when a new piece of content is added to the channel. We appreciate all of you have done it already. If you haven't done it yet, now is a great time to do it. As well as our audio listeners, we appreciate you as well. If you're not an audio listener, download, rate, review, and subscribe to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, anywhere that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating. Leave us a positive review. We appreciate that very much. And make sure you support our wonderful sponsors who support us. Go to manscaped.com and use the promo code DolphinsTalk to save 20% off of your order on some of the best men's below-the-belt grooming products on the market. Then head over to trueclassic.com and use the promo code DolphinsTalk to save 25% on some of the best t-shirts on the market. I mean, these things are awesome. I'm a huge fan, have been a huge fan of True Classic since before they became a sponsor. So check them out at trueclassic.com. They got t-shirts, hoodies, they've got undergarments, they've got outerwear. It's a great company. Their products, their proceeds support veterans as well, so it's for a good cause as well. TrueClassic.com. Use the promo code DolphinsTalk. And finally, BetUS.com is the exclusive betting home of DolphinsTalk.com. So head to BetUS.com and use the promo code DolphinsTalk to get a 125% sign-on bonus. They're going to have a lot of special wagers coming your way. You can hear all about it on the Gambling Corner show with Mike and Tom right here on the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network, as well as the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. I have talked enough. It's week one. We're fired up, so let's get into it. My interview with Michael Antico, a big fan of the New England Patriots. Hello, Miami Dolphin fans. Welcome to another episode of Dolphins versus Everyone. It is officially game week, week one of the 2022 NFL season. So we're kicking off this new series during the regular season anyway. It's not the first episode of the show. Mike did an episode with somebody who covers the Jets earlier this offseason. Name escapes me right now, but that's okay. But we are joined here today by a very good friend of mine. Longtime listeners of the Same Old Dolphin Show will remember that he's actually appeared on the Same Old Dolphin Show in the past, helped us preview a Dolphins-Patriots game, and he is joining us today to preview the Week 1 game between the Dolphins and the Patriots. I am just thrilled to introduce you to, or to reintroduce you to, my very good friend, Michael Antico, better known as Tico. Tico, how's it going, man?
It's going all right. You know, big Pats fan, but living here in Browns country, Northeast Ohio. So a lot of hype about the Deshaun Watson situation here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I trust me. I know all about it as a Dolphin fan. We were following that saga with very, very closely for a little while. And needless to say, I'm very pleased that our team eventually backed down from that situation, but without opening that can of worms. Yeah, you're in Ohio now. You're a former resident of Central New York, where that's where we first met. And just so folks who are watching and listening know, me and this guy, we've been through the wars together here in Central New York. Many a Sunday spent at a little hole in the wall dive bar in Central New York, drinking for hours straight, watching football. Oftentimes, he's the only Patriots representative. I'm the only Dolphins representative, and we're in this bar. In fact, it was in that bar many years ago where me and Tico were the only two people left in the bar when Cleo Lemon hit Greg Camarillo for that big game-winning touchdown in overtime. That was like probably pushing 7:30 on a Sunday night. That night, Dolphins got the big overtime win, celebrated like won the Super Bowl. He was celebrating too because he knows that I'm a long-suffering Dolphin fan, and so we celebrated. The bartender poured us some complimentary shot of some Polish liqueur. I don't remember what it was. It looked and tasted like plasma, but in the moment, it was fantastic.
The other side of Robitussin, but and I maintain this for every team. I don't think any NFL fan should have to endure an 0-16, and not just because you're my friend, but because you got to get one at least. There has to be one Sunday night where you go to bed feeling good about your team.
Yeah, which for that season, that was it. That was the moment, and it felt good. But anyway, it's been a long time of suffering for many of us as Dolphin fans. You as a Patriots fan, on the other hand, you've only been suffering a little bit recently because it had been you've been leading a pretty charmed existence as a Patriots fan. You as a Boston sports fan in general, it's been a pretty good couple of decades in terms of Boston sports. But how are you feeling about the Patriots now as we come into this third year in the post-Brady era of this team?
Well, I will say I feel better about it than I felt going into the Cam Newton season, but that's setting a pretty low bar. I thought Mac Jones and the Patriots in general definitely had their ups and downs last season. Fact of the matter is, since Tommy left, the Patriots are 17-17. That's just the tail of the tape. And that final loss being an absolute obliteration on Buffalo's home field in the playoffs last year. But on to this year, my expectations are not what they were last season. They are lower. I don't think the Patriots will be a bad team, but I'm not convinced at this point that they will be a very good team. I think they're going to be solid mid-tier, and it's just going to come down to those, like I've always said, I think every football season and every football team comes down to about between 5 and 10 plays throughout the season that define that team. And I certainly think that will be the case for the New England Patriots this year.
Yeah, it certainly feels like, and we talk about that on the Same Old Dolphin Show all the time, that there is not a whole lot of difference between that team. Well, 9-7 isn't really a thing anymore, but there's really not that much space differentiating a team that finishes at 10-7 and a team that finishes at 7-10. It's really just the flip of a coin. There's always those teams that are elite and those teams that are really, really bad. And then there's a bunch of teams in the middle that get a little lucky. Maybe they get a little lucky. Maybe the luck goes against them. And that tends to be the difference between those teams in that sort of middle tier. And it feels like we're at a place right now, at least internally as Dolphin fans, where we feel like we're probably not quite in that elite tier, although there are some Dolphin fans who feel like we are in that elite tier. We just need to prove it. But it feels like the Dolphins and Patriots have sort of gone like this, where we had the Patriots, who were for the longest time one of those elite teams in the NFL. And even when they weren't an elite team, they were always one of those teams that you thought of as dangerous, where the Dolphins were kind of middling and inept for a really long time. And even when things seemed to be going the right way, were always seemed capable of shooting themselves in the foot. And now you've got a situation where it really feels like the Dolphins are on the up, 2 straight winning seasons. Now they've brought in Tyreek Hill. They've really strengthened their offense, and it feels like they're ready to take that next step forward, where the Patriots are still kind of, it feels like to me, trying to figure out what their identity actually is. as they, as they continue along this line. Like, who is Mac Jones? How are you feeling about Mac Jones as your quarterback? And with this situation where you've got Joe Judge and Matt Patricia, or some combination of the two, calling plays on offense. As a Dolphin fan, I know what that story is like. This was the beginning of last year for us, where we had two people, maybe it was a mystery third person, Charlie Fry, calling plays. So how are you feeling about that in particular, that offensive identity?
Well, as far as Mac Jones, I don't have any complaints. I don't know that I could. You're never going to see a number 12 again. And I think most Patriots fans understand that. But I also think that we're very lucky to have gotten a quarterback like Mac Jones. He's got the right mentality. He's got at times some of the physical skills, and one of his best attributes is he doesn't seem fazed by the ups and downs. So I think that works in the Patriots' favor. Where I think that he is perhaps being set up to fail is a little harsh at this point. But you're going to take a young quarterback who showed some promise, but you really didn't unleash him last year for a bulk of the season to mixed results. And then you take away his offensive coordinator, who, by all accounts, he had a great relationship with Josh McDaniels. And how could you not? The guy is an offensive genius. I think he's going to do very good things down in Las Vegas. But as far as the Patriots offense goes, I mean, most Pats fans will say that they've suffered through the summer and the preseason watching a very inept offense. There are times where people are lauding the defense, but I think anybody who studies the team long enough knows the defense shouldn't be the star of this team. It should be the offense, and thus far it hasn't been. We all know that the preseason doesn't mean a whole lot, but it can be very telling. And only putting up 6 points against the aforementioned McDaniels during the preseason, is that the end of the world? No. But is it prognostication of what's to come? Perhaps. There's going to be a tough first month for this team. They are on the road 3 of 4 games. And if I'm not mistaken, their only home game is against the Ravens, who are not afraid of coming to Foxborough. They do get a reprieve for that second month, playing the Browns, the Bears, the Lions, and the Jets. But I think the offense, it has a lot to go. One of the biggest losses that I see are the losses of the two guards. I mean, you lost Ted Karras and you lost Shaq Mason. For a team that was trying to build on the run, I'm not sure that was the best move to make, was ditching 2 long-term, pretty good offensive linemen. So as far as the offense, I'm holding with bated breath.
Yeah, and you also lost, not an offensive lineman, but losing James White this year, him stepping away from the game, moving on, leaves you with Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson in the backfield. Couple of pretty good running backs back there, and I could talk your ear off from a fantasy football perspective about those two guys. But you've also got this wide receiver core, which I think is interesting, including a former Miami Dolphin in Devontae Parker. So how are you feeling about that unit? You've got Jacoby Myers and Keel Harry just never really worked out for you guys, it seems like. It seems like you totally whiffed on him, although whiffing on draft picks, not to throw a shot at you or anything like that, but it seems like I've criticized the Dolphins at being pretty bad at drafting at times. It seems like the Patriots have really struggled with that in recent years. So
they're a big team on homegrown talent. I mean, they brought guys up, guys you've never heard of before, become a James White, become a Shane Vereen, become a Deion Branch, those kind of players. As far as Devontae Parker, I believe you said it to me when we first got him. Health is everything. If he can stay healthy, I think he can be a viable addition to this football team. But that remains to be seen. Injuries affect every team, but when I see a player, and unfortunately, this seems to be a hallmark of Bill Belichick, he seems to go after oft-injured players, specifically linemen coming out of college. And that's where we find ourselves with our left and right tackles, respectively. They both find themselves on the IL a lot more than you would like, particularly at the left tackle position, which everybody knows, unless you have a left-handed quarterback, is the most important part of the offensive line.
So you mentioned earlier that anybody who's a Patriots fan should know that the defense should not be the part of this team that's shining. So does that mean that you do not feel confident about this Patriots defense? I mean, obviously this is not the Patriots defense that, was carrying it to Super Bowls, not too long ago, but are you worried at all about the defense this year?
Well, I'll start from the top. I think the safety position is going to be the strength of the defense going into the season. You have an aging Devin McCourty, but he is somebody you can never count out. He's been a long-time Patriot. I believe only eclipsed by Matthew Slater as the longest tenured player on the team. Perhaps that's switched, though. But the safety position seems fine. With the departure of J.C. Jackson, I think that leaves our corners in a tough spot. I think Jalen Mills is a very serviceable NFL cornerback, but there are question marks. We've got Jonathan Jones usually covering the slot, but I think that he may be pushed into starting service on the outside, which with his height, I have my doubts with some of the bigger receivers. Our defensive line, rather, I think has a lot of potential. You have long-term guys that most people won't pay attention to, like a Lawrence Guy. Very solid defensive lineman. And I think we're witnessing, hopefully, the blooming of a fantastic lineman in Christian Barmore. I think he can bring a lot to this. He certainly showed it at times last year. Linebackers they were aging last year, and now we've lacked speed at that area of the field for a long time. You can see that they can't seal the edge. And if your linebackers have to cover receivers, they simply don't have the ability to do so consistently. You have pieces on the defense, but I don't think right now you have the full picture.
So then it stands to reason that this is a defense that could find themselves in for quite a test in week 1 when they go up against the Miami Dolphins and all of the speed that team is bringing to the table. But before we get into that matchup for week 1 and talking about the ins and outs of that, what are your thoughts as an outside observer about the Miami Dolphins? I mentioned how my sort of perception of it, but how do you feel as an outsider who maybe, hasn't followed the Dolphins too terribly closely, but, as obviously a fan of another team in the AFC East, you got your eyes on them. So what are your thoughts?
Well, from a Patriots fan's perspective, the Dolphins are always that game on your schedule that you're like, oh God, here we go again. Especially when they play in South Florida. It has been a house of horrors. Even in the peak of the Brady years, there has never been consistent success. They pulled off a few wins. I think probably the most memorable to me was back in 2003 overtime game where Lindo Mare missed that field goal to the right and Brady threw a bomb to Troy Brown. But other than that, I cannot think of any really exhilarating wins in Miami. I mean, going back to the 85 season where both of us were, we were a little too young to remember those. But thoughts on the Dolphins this year? I think they have done nothing but improve over the last few years. Now, have they improved enough to separate themselves from the mediocre teams in the AFC? That's a very difficult question. The AFC West alone is bringing 4 contenders to the table, at least sitting here in early September. And make no mistake, I truly think that this division right now is Buffalo's division to lose. I mean, they have done nothing but make market gains. But as far as the Dolphins go, I think the biggest question marks from an outside perspective, I'll start one. I thought the defense for Miami was mediocre at best. And that's not going to cut it in this AFC race that we're going to see in the next few months. The two positions that I would look at with big question marks if I was a Dolphins fan would be the head coaching position and the quarterback position. There's no disrespect to Mike coming in and coaching this team, but you got something to prove, and you've got at least 2 heavy hitters in your division besides you that are going to make some trouble throughout the season. And I think Tua's a very serviceable quarterback, but from my perspective, he is a game manager. His record against New England, 3-0, outside of the matter at the moment, I think he is at best a game manager. I'm not sure that that's what I'm looking for out of a top 10 draft pick.
I mean, no, I think that's more than fair, and I'm sure there are many people that are nodding their heads in agreement with you. I'm sure there are also, as anytime you mention that man's name, there it is like he is somehow one of the most controversial figures in South Florida sports, and shouldn't be. When you look at the guy, like outside of the fact that he plays quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, he should and was drafted, third overall. Like this is not a guy that you should be, this is not a guy that you should be fighting over. But I mean, he's a very boring guy, I think, in actuality, but he is pretty divisive. And, there are going to be people that are going to argue one way. You're going to be people that argue another way. I agree with you that is certainly a question mark. And I think it is also Mike McDaniel coming in, being the new head coach. That is a question mark as well. As you mentioned, you thought the defense was pretty mediocre. And while the stats kind of say otherwise, I think I mean, particularly in the second half of last season, you could easily go, well, look at the quarterbacks who they were up against. They started really poorly in the first half of the season, then turned it around in the second season when they stopped playing real quarterbacks. So I think it is fair to say that there is a question for how that defense is going to look in 2022. And I think that's something that we'll sort of see how it plays out over the course of this season. I do want to mention, just because you sort of set it up when you couldn't think of too many ecstatic victories that the Patriots had over the Dolphins. I can think of one specific ecstatic victory that the Dolphins had over the Patriots, one where we were actually together for.
This was the last time I appeared on this show. Actually,
it was previewing that game, wasn't it? It was previewing that game.
Yes, it was.
Yes, previewing that game, and then as it turned out, it was the Miracle in Miami game, and yeah, I mean, I was pretty resigned to the Dolphins losing that game, and then that play happened, and it was one of those occasions where you turned to look at me after I had gotten finished doing 3 laps around the house, screaming my head off in excitement. You sort of stood up, you looked at me, you said, "Congratulations." You grabbed your hat and your shoes, you walked home. Walked down the street. That was it.
Well, I have to say that is one of the most puke-inducing losses that I have ever watched in any sport. I mean, hats off to a fantastic play, and if I'm a Dolphins fan, that's one I cherish for a long time. But I'll remind any and all Pats fans that are listening, remember what happened at the end of that season.
Right, and that's what I tell all the Dolphin fans as well. It's like, hey, yeah, that was a really great moment in the sun, but how did that work out for us at the end of the season? The end of the season, when the regular season was over, we were packing our bags, getting ready to go play golf, and the Patriots went on to win the Super Bowl. So, but that leads us to this moment now where it's 2022. It's a brand new season, and it's week 1. Patriots coming to town, coming to Hard Rock to take on these new look Miami Dolphins. So how are you feeling about this game and how the Patriots match up with the Dolphins? Would you like to make a prediction as to what you think you're going to see on Sunday?
Sure. I mean, I don't ever feel good about playing in South Florida. Have good things happen from time to time? Sure. But by and large, even our decent games never quite seem to go our way. This is a brand new season, and the Patriots are still working out a lot offensively. I think they're going to have their struggles early and often throughout the early season, not just week 1. I think you're going to see for the first month of the season them really trying to establish things. And defensively, there's a lot of speed on that Miami side of the ball. Between Waddle and Hill, I think you're going to see a lot of quick go route, get them the ball, and let them do their thing in space. But as I mentioned earlier, I think the 2 most important positions right now, at least on paper, have to go to the advantage to New England, and that is head coach and quarterback. I don't think that Mac Jones is ready to lead us to a Super Bowl just yet, but I will certainly take him 17 games over Tua. And Bill Belichick's resume, despite drafting and being a general manager, do speak for themselves. Going forward into the game, It's warm. They are taking the trip on Tuesday this week, which is very rare. Normally they make their trip either on Friday or Saturday, and I think that's to acclimate to some of the warmer, more humid conditions. Anyone in the New England area knows that they don't need to leave home this year to do that, as it has been an extremely hot summer. But I think that is good. Keep them in there, get them practicing early. But it's week one, as you and I have often discussed. You can hype it up. You can preseason this and new acquisition that. It's all going to come down to those 60 minutes or more on the field.
Yep, absolutely. So, what do you think? How's this going to play out on Sunday?
Well, I think you're going to see. I think you're going to see the Dolphins move the ball effectively early. I really do. I think you might look at a 2-score or more hole early. I think special teams does go New England's way, at least on paper. They didn't have a great special teams year last year, but they do. And I never thought I would be saying this, but thank goodness for Nick Folk. He has been an absolute savior for this team over the last few years. And I wouldn't be surprised if it came down to a few kicks for New England. I don't know that they have the ability to knife down the field as effectively as they wanted. I would be lying if I said I think the Patriots go in there and no problem win. But I can't really root against my team, especially week one. So I'm going to say that we're going to go 24-23 New England.
All right, there it is. All right, so he's predicting the Patriots are going to finish with a win, a big dub on the road in week one.
We hope so. We've got a long season ahead of us, and we owe you one for last year. And that's another thing. Patriots and the Dolphins have opened the season against one another for I don't know if it's a record, but it is in my memory. 3 straight years. How do you guys feel about that?
I mean, it's kind of boring. Honestly, I'd like to have somebody different week one. I would like to start. I like starting week one without it being a division game. I feel like especially because my theory of the case is that it takes about a month for a team to find itself. And I kind of like I like that first game of the season to be, obviously they all matter. You only play 17 games, but I would like that first game to not have so much attached to it. Like think about it. You got Buffalo and the Rams playing on Thursday night, and that's 2 teams, 2 Super Bowl contenders. It's a big, big game. But I mean, if either team loses that game, it's really not the end of the world. But I mean, as it stands for the Dolphins and Patriots, you lose this game on Sunday. You got, not only are you 0-1, but you're 0-1 in the division. So you're putting yourself in the hole early. So, I mean, there's a lot riding on it. So I don't love that, but it is what it is. I will be making my prediction for this game later this week on the Same Old Dolphins show here on the Dolphins Talk Podcast Network. So be on the lookout for that, and you'll hear my thoughts. But Tico, thank you so much for joining us on this regular season debut of Dolphins versus Everyone. I know you're not a big social media guy, but do you have any projects, anything at all that you want to plug, that you want people to check out? You want them to go, adopt an animal? What do you want?
Oh, yeah. Well, if you are in the Northeast Ohio area and you're looking for a new furry friend, you can absolutely go to the Ashtabula Animal Protective League. They are wonderful people. I have worked with them, and it's who we have our dog Coco from, and she is an absolute gem. As far as listening to me and my majestic voice, which I'm sure all of you want to do, I am on a relatively new science fiction podcast called Windfall. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. Pretty good dystopian storyline, episodic. 2 second seasons coming out soon, and there will be a 3rd season recording. I appreciate you letting me plug a few things.
Of course. Well, we appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your Labor Day schedule to sit down and chat with us and talk a little football. I mean, you and I would probably be sitting down to talk about football anyway, so might as well throw it on camera and record it a little bit. Thanks again for joining the show. And just like I would say in real life, if I was in the room with you, good luck on Sunday. Hope you lose.
Let's go Patriots. 17 games. Let's do it.